Welcome everyone to another episode of the Shaman's Way podcast. As always, this episode comes from the teachings of our amazing friend and shaman in residence, Kriket. We hope you're enjoying these podcasts as much as we enjoy making them, and I'd like to take just a moment to ask you if you would please leave us a rating and a comment in iTunes or whichever podcast player you're listening to us from. Giving us a rating and sharing this podcast with others is the biggest way you can tell us that you like our show. Now, without further ado, on with the episode.
Chasing the ritual. It was a fancy term that I used one time when I was sitting in my chilly little basement in my townhouse, and I wanted to write a short essay on what it was like to be involved with chasing the ritual. And what do I mean by that? We live in a society, I live in a society that does not have elders in my tradition, and that does not have, I don't have the benefit of a tribe. I don't have a benefit of someone teaching me. So chasing the ritual really does mean I am in my meditation. I'm doing the different things that I do in order to find a ceremony or a ritual to bring to my community, or to work with healing, or even with my own transformation, my own transforming of self. Shape-shifting and masks have been a really important aspect of my spiritual journey. Shamanism, by some anthropologists, decree or think or put forward the idea that shamanism was one of the first parts or first performers of art. Ritual was a performance art. I have a difference in mind between ceremony and ritual, and it is postulated or thought of best by Patrice Malidoma-Somé, and what he put forward was that ceremony has a middle, a beginning, and an end. And we think of ceremony, I think of ceremony like a wedding ceremony, like a baptism ceremony, like something that has an expectation. You're inviting spirit in, but there has an expectation. Ritual, however, is a process and an event of relationship between yourself and between spirit. What do I mean by that? I mean that we have perhaps a structure that we have set up. So for myself, it would be calling in the directions. In my circles, then from there, it would be, it would be a smudging of each person. And there are certain skeletal structures within the formation of the body of the ritual. Then the second part of the ritual begins, which is also very structured from my perspective. So we have the drumming, we have dancing, we have the different ways of invoking and bringing in that spiritual energy, or raising the spiritual energy, changing our focus. And the difference between ceremony and ritual is that from the bringing on of ritual, from there, we don't know how or where or how tidy it will end, or even if it does end from that perspective. I view ritual as a form of enacted prayer. And there are those of us who are ritual leaders who chase the ritual, and sometimes I view myself as the intermediary or the interpreter between what the spirits have shown me, how they wish to be enacted and brought forward, and how we as a group, as a community, or as an individual can help to realize that vessel, that body, that perspective of spirit. So from that perspective, from myself, I've negotiated with the spirits, I've healed with the spirits on behalf of myself, on behalf of my village being the lovely humans that have supported the process of their spiritual learning, my spiritual learning. ritual isn't strictly a prayer, and it really isn't strictly performance art from that perspective. The ability to transform ourselves in public performance from our normal personality into somebody or something else, whether that be a spirit, a god or goddess, or an animal, an ancient ancestor, or a representation of spirit. This is an aspect of ritual and chasing the ritual. The crucial role is that we transcend the boundaries of our own identity and we follow a path to personal knowledge. And for me, it can be embraced and expressed as dramatic performance. And hopefully it helps to lead the circle into their ritual experience as deeply then into their own psyche. So we all become the first, the people that are enacting spirit. We all become that which is the relationship of spirit to self, the relationship of self to spirit. Bill Moyers, in one of his various documentaries, he said this, I thought was very interesting. Who interprets the divinity inherent in nature for us today? Who are the shamans? Who interprets unseen things for us? Chasing the ritual is about answering those questions. Who does? How do we interpret divinity inherent in nature? How do we enact ourselves to become practitioners or bringers of another element or another energy? Who interprets the spirit world for us? How do we interpret the spirit world? Not only for ourselves, do we look for someone else? We have danced and we have sang our stories. We have dancers, and their role is to tell a story with their bodies and through their actions. And some of us who've had the opportunity in Alberta to witness the First Nations with their bear dance, the eagle dance, the hoop dances, you really can feel and see that spirit move through them and shape-shift them. And that shape-shifting is where we move, we tell that story through our bodies and through our actions. We transform the energy, we transform the circle, and the ritual recreating is generating and it is holding those sacred spaces. In shape-shifting, we also use yoiking, which is a Heck, if you're lucky, spirit picks you and sings through you. And yoiking is not my voice, not my sound, not my song, but spirit's song. And that is shape-shifting. This one time, this isn't necessarily about yoiking, but this is definitely about being ridden by spirit and shape-shifting. I was in one of the states, I can't remember which state it was, and I was attending a conference in Nome and Fairy Conference, and I was one of the presenters. What ended up happening was I often wander away if I'm at an event or if I'm with people. I like to just kind of wander off on my own. That doesn't necessarily always be the smartest thing because I don't always have a good sense of direction when I'm being wandering. However, the point of the story is I had walked into this part of the forest, and I was quite deep into the woods and really in a beautiful mountainous area. And all of a sudden, this song came over me, and I recognized the song. It was a Christian song of some sort, but I was not singing English at all. It had to be Polish, possibly Romanian, or I don't know what it was, the language. However, whoever was singing me was I'm really an incredible singer. So your ability to shapeshift can lend itself in other ways. So my ability to step aside and shift and shape in order to make room for a song or a spirit who has to sing that one last time, that one last song. What if that spirit that stepped into my body, what if it was their job to sing her family home, but she died before she was able to sing this particular Christian hymn? I don't know. It's a neat story. That's an aspect of the story. What is always very fascinating to me is right after it left me and I walked a couple of steps, because as I was still standing there, I was like, oh my goodness. And I could make the English equivalent of what that song was. And as soon as I stepped out of the sphere of that energy, it was poof, gone. I could not tell you, I still cannot tell you to this day what song I sang or what the meaning of the Christian hymn was. But as we move through with shape-shifting, as we move through with song has the ability to pick me up and to sing me. And I know that it does for other people in my circle and in the rituals that we do together. There are people who are wished upon by spirit to open their voice, open their mouth, and allow them to sing through them. And sometimes that's yoiking, sometimes that's finding a spirit song or a soul song. I think that I can't answer as to what a person is experiencing, because I'm not the person who is experiencing per se. Now with masks, masks are shapeshifters. They help to shift that aspect of you. When we talked about the ability to bring on and be the intermediator and the interpreter between, the humans and the spirits, when we are able to transform ourselves from our normal personality into somebody or something else, whether, as I said before, whether that's a goddess or a god or an animal. For some of us, it's an ancestor's ancestor, or representation of spirit, as we've seen many of the beautiful masks over the years. We've all seen beautiful masks, and we've created beautiful masks. I really am drawn to making my own masks. I have had a mask gifted to me, and this is a very interesting and fun story. It all began on January 31st, 1999. It was a very cold night, and it was a blue moon, and my wonderful group of circle mates that way back then, we decided that we would do an outdoor ritual. Of course, it turned out to be minus 30 Celsius Alberta weather. And no, I'm not exaggerating. It really was minus 30. And on the way there was a red-tailed fox dead on the highway. So, being the roadkill queen that I am, I knew that I wanted to have it. I went to the place where we were all meeting, which was an acreage, which was, a lovely 45-minute or an hour drive southeast of the city. And I dropped off what I had to drop off, grabbed a shovel from the homeowner, went back and was able to lift the fox off the highway and put it into my trunk. And much to my partner's chagrin, my partner at the time, I believe dry heaving was involved on my partner's behalf. However, that's really neither here nor there anyway. And during the ceremony, I asked the fox if I could have any part of it, or if it wanted me just to bury it. And I did receive permission to remove the tail. So I did remove the tail. And I loved that tail. I did. I learned how to do simple taxidermy so that I could save the tail. And I just thought it was the greatest thing in the world to own this tail. And I was doing soul retrieval work for a lovely woman. And the tail said, send me with her. And I coveted my tail. And my first response was, no, I'm not giving you away, because I thought that was my ego, or, maybe my need to please, or I didn't know what it was. So I wasn't willing to bet that it was the voice of spirit. See how easy it is to talk yourself out of sacred, especially when you're in love with something. Anyhow, I digress. And I did eventually give it to the person who, within very short term, left the city of Edmonton and moved to a different province. Occasionally, she would come back into Edmonton. She still had clients that she would see here. And then we lost touch. And 15 to 18 months later, maybe even longer, maybe it was... Anyway, it doesn't really matter. What ended up happening was she said, I have a mask for you. I said, okay. And she sent me a picture of it, and I immediately fell in love with it. And what the mask is that she was treating somebody in the province where she was. He didn't have any money, so they traded. He is an amazing leather worker, a leather artist, and he said, give me something to make a mask from. So she gave the foxtail to this amazing leather artist. And eventually the leather artist returned the mask to her as payment for her services. It hung on her wall for a couple of years, and then it asked to return to here. And when she presented it to me, I had to laugh, because first of all, fox is a bit of a shapeshifter, kind of like a coyote, but in a different sort of way. And the fox had completely shifted shape from the time that I saw it as roadkill on the highway to this amazing mask that I have hanging on my wall. And when I am able to wear that mask for ceremony, and the mask in and of itself is approximately 4.5 feet wide. It has large pheasant feathers that were found in and around the artist's home, and they are part of the accoutrements, or the additions to this beautiful red dyed leather mask. So I am walking around with a mask that is about 4.5 feet wide, and it is approximately 3.5 feet tall. It is quite a mask to wear and to bring on and take in the energy of this mask. And it can be really very terrifying from what I have heard from others when they see the mask. I can't attest to that because I'm the one wearing the mask. I'm not receiving the mask. I'm not looking at what spirit is with me during my journey as I wear that mask. And that brings me back to the point of shape-shifting. When I wear that mask, I really change. And I realized the benefit of working with masks when I started to do trance dances with my groups a number of years ago, and we would do blindfolded trance dances, which are very, very powerful. And I switched and also did masked trance dances. And they are a movement of body, so we go through the very slow rhythms, kind of following Gabriel Roth's idea of slow movement, quicker, 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 until you're into a crescendo of movement and space, and then you dance down and come into that slow, that rhythm. And it's about a 74 or 75-minute process. And when you have the freedom to dance with a mask, you have the freedom to shift into that mask. I strongly encourage people to make their own masks. I strongly encourage people to buy gypsum, which is this thin fabric for making casts, and you can find it at most home healthcare places. From there, you slather your face with oodles and oodles of Vaseline or whatever petroleum jelly or oil is of your choice, and slick back your hair. It does really help best to work with partners, because you should have someone helping you lay the mask on you. It doesn't mean you can't do it yourself. by any stretch of the imagination, but doing it with a partner is just much easier. That gives us the shape-shifting from the perspective of our own face. When we build a mask that is specifically to our specifications, I feel it has a much more powerful effect to create our own mask because it is fit specifically to us. And we are so incredibly capable of making, creating, wearing, perpetuating masks in our day-to-day life that the creation of a mask, the decoration of the mask, the bringing forward of the self or changing of the self enables us to move into a different place in ceremony, or enables us to move into a different place in ritual. So in ceremony, if you were to do an annual ceremony of welcoming in the god or the goddess, if that is part of your tradition, then perhaps you would make a mask that would be sturdy enough to be taken on and off numerous times, and therefore that becomes your mask of the god or the goddess, or the mask of winter solstice, or the mask of whatever your case may be. And the ability to wear that mask and change your perception of self and change your perception of the world around you, I find helps to open us to be more or wider than perhaps we thought we could be within that moment or within that time. Wearing a mask during drumming, what I have found is that a different drummer can come through my hands and manipulate the sounds on my djembe, or even manipulate the sounds on my single-sided frame drum. Masks and songs come like they flow like, milk and honey for me together. They are just a succulent, joyous relationship of spirit when I can embody a song, or a song will embody me, or the song sings me. The relationship that I create with spirit as I create the mask is also a large component to how the mask is being worn. As an example, for this weekend, I was in the process of making feather fans and also creating a mask for winter solstice. The mask I started a week ago, and I'm following a mask that is similar to the Buryat, the Russian shamans who wear the masks that have the fringes on them. And I have made one before and have found it to be a most amazing experience to create a mask that you can barely see through and nobody can see you. In the solstice ceremony, I am the fairy woman. In Finnish tradition, the ferryman is a fairy woman, and she is also called the mistress of death. So my mask is in the Buryat tradition with the fringes in the front, but I've really modified it, and there will eventually be pictures of it on Shaman's Way, as I am about 90% finished, and I've created fringes around the entire hat. And my intention in creating that mask and creating the inability to see my eyes is that, in that tradition or in that ritual space, you cannot look upon the eyes of death. You should not look upon the eyes of death as you are being ferried across the underworld. In the Finnish tradition, she ferries the boat across the underworld. And there's an interesting story about Vainamoinen, which is in the Kalevala, is the shaman in the Finnish Eddas. and Wainamoinen finds himself on the island and meets the goddess of death, not the fairy woman, but the goddess of death, and has a very interesting way of getting off the island. However, I digress. The preparation of the mask, I have put the mask on and off a number of times. I've worked on it for probably on and off of 12 hours this weekend. So even as I sit and I speak to you, my constant listener, and speak about the experience that I have, a part of me is still with the mask. A part of me is still not quite present. And sometimes I find that when I'm not fully present and not fully accounted for intellectually, quote unquote, I find that my words become more eloquent. My words become more of a relationship between wisdom and knowledge. And I like to be in this place and allow parts of me to just kind of step aside and let spirit do the talking, because they seem to have sometimes much, much better words than I ever could have. Shape-shifting, mask-making, ritual, chasing the ritual, it all bespeaks to a relationship that you're constantly evolving and constantly changing and constantly moving with. The relationship between you and your spirits it's never static. It is continuously in relationship. It's kinesthetic. It's continuously evolving, shifting, and changing. And I know evolving means changing in its own pattern and in its own way. I really encourage you, whether you are practicing with a group or whether you are choose to be a solitary practitioner, I really encourage you to create a mask. The gypsum, I don't know what it costs in other countries or the availability of it, but it costs $2.50, and that's what it costs to make a mask. And your time is your own value, and it just becomes this clay, this plaster white mask, and upon it you can glue, you can sew, you can do any number of things. If you are making a mask for the very first time, one of the things I would really recommend that you do is, there's a number of things. If you have an old pair of glasses that have quite a nice tight arm or snug arm, you can build that into the inside of your mask. Just make sure when you're making the mask close to your face that you leave room for the arm. And that can be what attaches the mask to your face. If that's unavailable to you, or that isn't very comfortable to have something resting on the top of your ears for what may be 6 hours, then what I would recommend, what I do is, as the mask is drying, I drill holes on either temple just above my ear, a good 1/2 inch, 3/4 of an inch above my ear, because it may come to rest on my ear. And I also put a hole in the forehead of my mask so that I create a piece of thread or a piece of elastic that goes from my forehead over the top of my head, and then it connects to the elastic that goes from ear to ear side, so that you're forming a cap in a sense. And it does make mask wearing far more comfortable, and you can do almost anything to a mask. You can be as creative as you like. I think the best part about making a mask is that there's absolutely no way you can do it wrong. You want to know why? Because no one's ever made your mask. No one's ever done your mask. So how on earth could you be wrong? How on earth can you mix up or mess up you? You can't. So if you've never made a mask and you're curious and you're too shy even to go out, then perhaps you can turn on your stereo or plug in your trusty earphones or do whatever it is you care to do. Wear your mask and dance and bring in that flow of spirit. If you're unable to dance or movement is not your thing, try journeying with your mask on. As you build your mask, journey to the mask. Ask the mask, who are you? How do I become you? Ask the mask, do you have a ceremony of awakening? Ask the mask, do you have a ceremony to put you to sleep? Ask the mask, where can I wear you? How may I wear you? I've had to ask my masks after I've used them in ritual, may I wear you at Samhain, at Halloween? And invariably the answer yes, except for one. One said no. And I love that because people are expecting you to be XYZ and you come out with some of these. I will eventually post some pictures on Shaman's Way of the different masks that I've made over time. And you will see that there is no limit to the variation or what you can do. And if you have a little bit of creativity and some time, it may benefit you to move as a shapeshifter in this way. Shape-shifting, I believe to the ancestors of old, do I believe that they could actually shift shapes? Why not? Why not? And do I believe that we can shape shifts today? What I know from my own experience is that I have been able to shift my energy so much so that I have been able to blend in and be unseen, whether I breathe in and bring in the energy of Grandmother Owl or whether I just camouflage like a fox. I have found it incredibly interesting to have people walk by me and say, hey, has anybody seen Kriket? Does anybody know what Kriket is? And that person is 6 inches from me. So there are other ways to learn shape-shifting. Do I believe our ancestors were able to form themselves into lions or bears or caribou? Why not? I don't know. There's no limit to what we know or what we can do, I don't think. Is it physically possible? I leave that to the medical professionals and to the physicists in the world to argue whether or not something is possible. That's not where my brain goes, and I certainly don't have the capacity to run those neurosynapses. However, if there is an answer, definitive, I'm certain that I won't learn about it in my lifetime. For, as we all know, there is far more in the world that will go on than I will ever know about. And there is far more in the world to learn than I can even barely scratch 1 millimeter of 1/4 of the endless supply of knowledge and information that is out there. I just speak from my corner of reality and my corner of the relationship to self and spirit. Chasing the ritual, how do I express the sacred? How do I allow the sacred to express itself through me? Mask making, how do I bring spirit to the forefront? How do I paint spirit? Even when I am absolutely no artist at all, but I have an idea. And again, I think I can't do it wrong because nobody's done it before. And shape-shifting in our journeys, we have talked about that. I believe there's even a guided meditation on the website for that. If there isn't, I can remedy that. And I know that there's likely at least one small article on Shaman's Way about shape-shifting. And if there isn't and I'm mistaken, I will absolutely remedy that. I know I don't have anything written on masks because I looked prior to deciding what my chat with you today would be about. And masks are, if I haven't written about it, then there's a good possibility that my psyche believes that it is truly an individual journey and an individual experience. I have so much respect for the master carvers who have created the most stunning and amazing masks that our eyes could ever behold, from every culture, from circumpolar to tropical to everything in between and on either side thereof. And I give as much respect to the beautiful face painters who allow ourselves and our children to feel like a butterfly, a tiger, a lion, or a bear for that day. I think that magic is found in so many ways, in so many shapes, in so many sizes, that we cannot discount it simply because we do not fully understand it. I don't fully understand physics, but I know that there are amazing minds out there who are working to make a different sense of the world than the sense that I have, and perhaps a sense of the world that is different from mine. Likely we will find common ground within that difference of soil, that difference of thought, that difference of mind. So I leave you with encouragement to be fancy, with encouragement to be bold, with encouragement to be expressive, and with encouragement to not be a critic of yourself, but rather, even if it's just this once, to be a cheerleader for yourself, and to know that within your toolbox, you have the capacity, the capability, if you so desire, to chase your own ritual, to create your own mask, to shift into that being which is in relationship to you, to deepen your relationship, to enhance your relationship, to be the expression and the expressed of your relationship. But always remember and never forget, as much as we are the perceiver, we are also the perceived. Thank you for listening to me and my thoughts on masks. And I look forward to meeting you here again in a couple of weeks. Have an amazing next time. Anyway, that's it. I'm waxing poetic and I've lost it. Have a good one. I'll talk to you later. Thanks a lot.
Thank you again for joining us here on the Shaman's Way podcast. If you have any questions, would like to make a request for a future episode, or if you're looking for other shamanic resources, including free drumming tracks, please visit us at shamansway.net. Until the next episode, be well, everyone.